Okay, we'll start with this. A second look at the upcoming Adela Ruiz versus Virginia Fuchs fight for the WBC Interim World Super Flyweight title that will line up the winner for a fight against reigning champion Ashley Gonzalez of Mexico. As stated, Adela Ruiz is 35 years old, whereas Virginia Fuchs is 36. Adela is a veteran of 17 professional bouts, where Virginia only has 3.
Just 3.
There's a legitimate argument that in spite of Ginny not having as much pro experience as many professional fights as Adela, she's a more talented, more technically sound fighter that has a better amateur pedigree than Adela does, but this ain't the amateurs. This is the pros making this a legitimate acid test.
It's a big step up in class.
So Adela is 1 year younger than Virginia. Adela is a bit bigger, a bit beefier than Virginia.
You see her in between fights. I don't know how she's making 115 pounds. She's huge for 115 pounds, but she's been getting down there.
Retaining power while she does it. The edge in power, the edge in strength, overall strength, would have to go to Adela Ruiz. She's a devastating puncher. You don't want to trade with her. Having last seen action earlier this year in July, before that she fought 3 times last year and she's already seen action once this one. This will be her second fight of this year, later on this month on the 31st.
Scheduled for 10 rounds.
Adela Ruiz, she has been 10 rounds before. I believe it was with Sonia Osorio, whereas Virginia Fuchs, in what is still her very young professional boxing career, she's never fought in a 10-rounder before. This will be the first time. The most she's ever fought for was in an 8-rounder opposite the ring experienced veteran India Smith. That was last year. It's been a year since Virginia Fuchs had a professional boxing match.
A full boxing match.
I say a full boxing match because Virginia has been keeping busy in Team Combat League.
Several rounds fought in Team Combat League all throughout this year, but the way it works, you're really only fighting for 1 round at a time. She's done that several times throughout this year.
So she won't necessarily be rusty the night of. It hasn't actually been a year's time since she saw action. It's been a year's time since she had a full-on boxing match.
In a traditional sense.
Ginny is a southpaw, leading with her right, whereas Adela is an orthodox fighter, leading with her left.
Ginny's lighter on her feet, whereas Adela is more flat-footed, looking to plant those feet, get in front of the opponent, let punches go. What you see is what you get.
You know what to expect. The disconnect is that this is somehow easy. You need to be ready for an opponent like this, somebody who's stubborn and persistent, physically imposing. That's what Adela Ruiz is.
You need to be ready for somebody like this, and at only 3-0, we don't actually know that Virginia...
We don't know if Ginny's ready. We're going to have to tune in to find out, but to the eye, she is the more nuanced fighter, the more multifaceted, athletic fighter. You see how she can beat those feet, move around, create space, get under the sweeping hooks, counter in kind. To the eye, she is a bit faster than Adela Ruiz. Faster on her feet with faster hands. Is she as durable, though? I think the whole point is not finding out. For Ginny Fuchs, I believe the goal is hit and not get hit, whereas for Adela, yeah, she wants to do all the hitting. She's kind of fighter, she's not afraid to take one to give one.
Because she believes in her power. She has power.
Though sometimes sacrificing defense for offense to get those power punches off. This is an area of opportunity for Virginia Fuchs. She won't have to work too hard to find Adela Ruiz because Adela will find her. Adela will bring the fight to her. The aesthetic of the match, I envision, Adela will be the aggressor. Virginia Fuchs will be the defender. She needs to stay on her toes, stay tricky, stay slippery, and don't spend too much time in the pocket. Don't do that. Don't try to match Adela's output because that's what she wants. She wants to trade.
You tie her up. You don't give her what she wants.
It's a fight where almost anything can happen because Adela Ruiz is a lot more experienced than Virginia Fuchs, even if she's not as talented or fundamentally sound. It could go either way, but I am leaning a bit towards Virginia Fuchs.
She's faster. She's lighter on her feet. I like that half step back.
How she takes a half step back as her opponent is closing in to create space, get a counter off, then move.
She moves.
She's not greedy with her speed or gluttonous. She'll get off a 2-punch combination real fast, get out of there, get back on her bike, get back on the move. That's how she's got to fight Adela.
Fuchs.
You don't want to stand in one spot, make yourself a stationary target. You don't want to trade with her. You don't want to match her output or try to match her power, fighting fire with fire. Virginia Fuchs' best weapon in this fight is her agility, mobility, and speed.
Demon speed.
That's what could win her this fight. I'm leaning towards Virginia Fuchs to out-hustle, out-maneuver Adela Ruiz, who's physically strong. She's very strong, but also slow and flat-footed.
Virginia can use that to her advantage.
And I don't know that Adela Ruiz has had to deal with a southpaw before. A southpaw in the pros, let alone a well-schooled one, a crafty one like Virginia.
Fuchs.
Virginia Fuchs on points is the pick. On the undercard of the upcoming Diego Pacheco versus Maciej Suliecki fight set to go down later on this month, a Matchroom show, I'm going with Virginia to win a points decision.
Fuchs. This is the man in boxing, Canelo, man. He's the face of boxing. He's got such a draw, and he makes a lot of money. So if you're going to entice someone like that, you're going to have to, you're going to have to give them exactly what they want. I don't think there's a riff. It's just Canelo's got the fight he wants. He's getting paid the money he wants. I saw the interview the other day. He said he gets 80% of everything. So unless they're prepared to do the same, which I doubt they are, and match the numbers, but then what it is they make him have probably harder fights, maybe what he don't want at this junction. He's in control. He's the guy steering this ship, and that's what it is.
I don't disagree with Dean Whyte that Canelo Alvarez is the man. He's used to doing things his way on his terms, and if you want any minute, any second of his time, it's going to cost you.
Because he doesn't need your money. He generates his own.
Though two things can be true at the same time. While momentarily, Canelo Alvarez doesn't need a Turki Alalshikh or anyone else for anything based on the drawing power he already has with his own core audience. How long is that audience going to support him and support fights like a Berlanga fight next month or a potential Chris Eubank Jr. fight at some point next year? That these are not big fights, and in terms of big fights and big name opponents, it seems like he's running out.
Yeah, there's guys around like Christian Mabili, who fought yesterday, or the winner of Skull versus Shishkin.
But those ain't big name fighters. Those don't make for big name fights. They really don't. And even a guy he's about to fight, Edgar Berlanga, while he might be a more recognizable fighter than those three aforementioned fighters, it's tantamount to being the tallest midget.
You're a bigger name than those names, but overall, you're not a big name either.
Now, I don't know that the door is completely closed for a David Benavidez fight, as that is one of the few fights that are out there for Canelo that people are asking for, they are clamoring for, and that fight makes for a much bigger fight than this one, than this Berlanga fight. I don't know if the door is closed for that fight, but if it is, if Canelo's not going to do it, and that's not going to happen, what are you going to offer up?
What else?
Berlanga? Eubank? Those fights are shit. They're dog shit. I'm a fan of Canelo, but I'm not going to pour sugar on shit. Dog shit.
The Canelo Alvarez fan base has become quite testy and combative in the days that have followed the Berlanga fight's announcement, arguing with everyone and asserting that Canelo Alvarez has earned the right to choose.
I'm not saying that he hasn't. He has earned the right to choose, kind of like how Floyd Mayweather earned the right to choose.
When he chose to fight Andre Berto?
He had the super fight by then. He already had the super fight with Manny Pacquiao, and he did, in fact, earn the right to choose. But who you choose, people don't have to be happy with.
People weren't happy with Mayweather versus Berto like they're not happy with Canelo versus Berlanga. The difference is that was Mayweather's swan song. That was intended to be his departure from the sport of boxing, whereas Canelo, I saw something where he said he plans on fighting for another 5 years?
I can't imagine another 5 years of Edgar Berlanga and Chris Eubank Jr. fights. I really can't.
Fights like that.
And I am a little sick of hearing Canelo's fans say that, well, he's earned the right to choose. Well, the right to choose is not what's up for discussion, what's up for debate. It's whether or not this is actually a good fight. And I think underneath it all, everybody knows that it isn't. Nobody thinks Edgar is in the same stratosphere as a Canelo Alvarez. So even if he has earned the right to choose, why is he choosing him? Why is he choosing this?
This guy sucks.
You're Canelo Alvarez. You don't bow down to nobody, and you only fight who you want to fight. You only do what you choose to do. So when you choose him,
nobody can force Canelo to do anything. Not the alphabets, the sanctioning bodies, or His Excellency. He only does what he wants to do. So if he's doing this, it's because he wants to.
There's no other explanation. You can't twist his arm or force him into anything. He is the captain of the ship. Just like Dean Whyte said.
Exactly that.
Canelo's independence from a Turki Alalshikh and his status as the face of boxing is reliant upon his core supporters, his paying customers. But how many people are going to keep paying if he keeps putting on Berlanga fights, Eubank fights?
I saw something where he said he might fight for another 5 years. If he does, who's he gonna fight for the next 5 years?
It's a legitimate question. The Canelo Alvarez fans love to assert that he's earned the right to choose. No one's saying that he hasn't, but you can reserve the right not to like who he chooses, not to like who he's fighting. Are we supposed to pretend that Edgar's all of a sudden a good fighter just because Canelo picked him?
He's in a unique situation. This is a unique problem. Canelo Alvarez has been around for many, many years and fought a who's who of good fighters and great fighters. So much so, there's not that much left for him to do.
Big name opponents and big name fights, there are not that many of them left. I can only think of one or two. The Crawford fight that Turkey wants to pay for, or the Benavidez fight.
That's it.
That's all. Unless Canelo plans on going back to light heavyweight for the winner of Better B versus Bivol, and I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to do that. I wouldn't blame him. I don't think he belongs up there.
It's too small. He hit a ceiling.
Better still, unless he's about to do that, and I don't think he's going to, he's running out of people to fight.
He comes in, he pushes everyone aside. He's kind of disrespectful. I think he's a royal and he's a little disconnected from the world, right? When you grow up in that environment. And he's going to make some mistakes, man. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. The only thing that he's got going for him is unlimited bags of money. And if he didn't have that, he wouldn't be here. And he's willing to lose that kind of money. And he's the only guy willing to lose that kind of money. Saudi Arabia is the only country willing to lose that kind of money, trying to finance professional sports with the excuse that it's for tourism. So I don't buy it. I think he's indulging himself. He's having a good time. He's excited. He wants to sit ringside with rappers and fighters. That's what I see.
That is Gary Jonas of ProBox. He's actually the owner of ProBox, who spoke to the good people on the Boxing Voice earlier this week about Turki Alalshikh. I saw the comments section under the video, and what a lot of fans were expressing is they don't really care what he's saying or all this stuff about Turkey. So long as Turkey is making the best fights possible,
that's all that matters. We don't need a psych evaluation of the guy. We don't need to know what he eats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Toilet seat up, toilet seat down. That as far as the boxing fan and what the boxing fan should be concerned with, Turkey is attempting to satisfy that, and that is all that matters. So anyone in opposition of him standing against what he's trying to do really has to explain themselves, because what is he trying to do except make the best fights?
And what the hell is wrong with that?
I saw a guy that goes by the name Crow King say, no, y'all are just mad because Turkey is moving the bullshit promoters out of the way and making real fights happen. Promoters and sanctioning bodies are a poison to the sport of boxing, and what Turkey is doing is moving them out of the way. I applaud him.
And I agree.
It's not a coincidence that none of these critics and these criticisms started to rear their ugly heads until Turkey hit America and started to try to make things happen here in America.
Gary says that Turkey is disrespectful.
I think it's the Americans that are disrespectful, and the American fighters like Gervonta Davis, who requested that in order to have a conversation with Turkey, he needs 2 Ferraris?
Buddy, who do you think you're talking to?
Gary said that Turkey is just indulging himself. When I disagree, it's the American promoters and the American fighters themselves that are indulging themselves in their own greed, their own unreasonable demands and attitudes towards the sport. You think everybody owes you something.
Fuck off.
You're not a soldier or a civil servant, a municipal servant. Prize fighting is not a public service to anyone.
You're not fighting for us, per se, so much as you're fighting for your own bank account. And if not for that, you wouldn't be fighting.
So when it comes to the fighting, if a generous benefactor steps into the sport to make the fights that were not being made, or make the fights that were taking too long to make, what's wrong with that? I know what's wrong with that, at least to these guys. They don't like the light that it puts them in. That little by little, Turkey is exposing who really wants to fight and who really doesn't. Who really wants to make the big fights
and who doesn't.
In previous instances and eras of boxing, you may have had to marinate a fight between 2 fighters so that when you finally do it, it generates a lot of money. But if a guy's coming in with a lot of money already and he's willing to spend it, you don't have to marinate anything, so you don't have that excuse.
Those excuses.
And I didn't hear people complaining in the UK. I didn't hear the UK promoters like Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, veterans of the sport, Ben Shalom, complaining about Turkey's involvement in the sport. No, it's not until he comes to America that you start to see this.
What have I been telling you about the Americans and the American boxing scene?
There are American fight fans, quote-unquote fight fans, that would prefer that their favorite fighters not fight in the best fights against the best fighters because they're afraid they may not be able to stay in character. That's the fight fans.
The fighters.
A few of them may not like Turkey's involvement in the sport because he's removing the excuses they normally hide behind. That if money has been an issue, well, it's not an issue now, so what's your excuse?
What indeed?
If there is a manager or a promoter in the sport of boxing that doesn't like Turkey's involvement, the reason they don't like it is because it puts them and their fighters under pressure.
Gary says that Turkey is disrespectful, that he's just indulging himself. Well, when you're paying for everything, you can do that. When you put up the most money to do the biggest fights,
then you can talk. Right now, it's him. We only got undisputed at heavyweight because of him. We're only getting undisputed at light heavyweight because of him.
boxing left to its own devices wasn't going to make either of those fights.
And what if I told you that there are Americans out there here in this boxing scene that would prefer things stay that way because they really don't want to make the best fights. Oh, they want to charge me and you every chance they get for every bit of schlock they put together. But putting the best against the best, believe it or not, there are people that don't want that in boxing.
Be wary of anyone you see criticizing Turkey for trying to give the fans what the fans have been asking for. Many of them. Should we have to wait 4 or 5 years, a year and a day, for two solid guys to fight each other?
Why should we have to do that all the time? Why?
Other sports aren't like that.
If the whole point of marinating a fight is to give it time to build so that it'll make more money, well, the money's here. The money's here so you can do it here and now.
But you don't really want to do that, do you?
If I had one critique, one criticism of His Excellency is that there are already too many box office fights. There are already too many pay-per-views.
It limits the size of the audience. The reason there are other sports in America that are bigger sports than boxing is because those sports are immediately accessible without too many paywalls.
Well, sure, you might need a subscription to a platform, but that's about it. Whereas in boxing, you'll need a subscription to a platform, and then you have to pay again for the pay-per-view. Too many paywalls, too many pay-per-views.
Super Bowl is one of the biggest sporting events in the country, and you don't have to pay per view to see that. So maybe some of these fighters need to check their egos and their purse demands at the door. Boxing was actually bigger when there weren't that many pay-per-views.
They can tweak the strategy.
Though I am not against Turkey and what he's trying to do for the sport.